You travelled to Africa for this documentary, and certainly the gender ideology wasn't prevalent where you travelled. In fact, they thought some of the things you were mentioning were insane. Tell me about those interaction and why the trans activists aren't monstering these guys instead of the likes of J.K. Rowling. Why aren't these men being called transphobic?
Yeah, well, maybe they'll try to. One of the problems is they can't get them banned from Twitter or YouTube because they don't have electricity. So I think that's one of the problems they run into. And also it's the intersectional game that you can kind of play against the left, where if they say anything to criticize these people, then it's considered racist. Which is maybe one of the reasons why we went over there, but really the main reason was just to show how gender ideology is a really uniquely modern Western, extremely insular sort of phenomenon. And once you get outside of our bubble, you encounter people who, it's not just that they disagree with it, it's that it doesn't even make any sense to them. They don't have the words to even talk about these kinds of ideas. That's how foreign it is to them in every sense of the word. So this is something that the Western world came up with relatively recently, and if you go outside of that, people just haven't heard of it. Not only have been, and if you tell them about it, as we discovered, they want nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Well, who can blame them? I mean, we are seeing it seep into all sorts of areas in subtle ways, I've got to say. I'm seeing now emails coming from people who are not trans, but announcing their pronouns on their emails or on their business cards. And then slowly, if you're one of the people who's not announcing your pronouns on your email, then you're a bigot. So it is incredible how quickly we have gone from tolerance and acceptance to what's almost like submission. If you don't submit to this way of thinking, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I think it is, for a lot of people, it is more submission than acceptance, because acceptance means that you are accepting it, that you're affirming it, you believe it. And I think for a lot of people, especially the ones that we talk to, just kind of doing man-on-the-street interviews all across the country, talking to a lot of normal people walking by, and we found a lot of the submission in the sense that they're willing to go along with it, they're not going to question it because they're afraid, but not because they really believe it. And that's one of the consequences of these ideas permeating all of our powerful institutions. It means that, if you're an average person on the street, then you can be severely punished for not accepting these ideas. You can have your job taken away. You can have your livelihood, your reputation, all that stuff. In some countries, you could actually go to jail. In Canada, they're putting people in jail for, quote, misgendering. So that's the consequence, that it's not as though gender ideology has convinced everyone because it made compelling arguments. It's just that it's scared everyone into, or lots of people anyway, into silence.
And just finally, your film's getting amazingly high viewer ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got, I think, 98% last I checked. But the critics aren't too keen to review your film, Matt. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I kind of expected, I knew the critics wouldn't give it rave reviews, but I thought that they would review it and just pan it, find a reason to hate it. And that's usually what they do with quote unquote conservative films, right? But in this case, they just will not watch it at all. They won't give it any kind of review. They are determined not to even watch it. And I think that just goes to show that they're afraid. They're afraid of this movie, and they're afraid of having their ideology exposed. They know that it can't be challenged, and so instead they're going to hide under their beds and wait for all this to go away. But I think unfortunately for them, it's not just going to go away.
Matt Walsh, thank you so much for joining me tonight.